What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom is freedom from the mind. The only reason that any human being is not free is because of his mind. It is the mind which creates his tortures. It is the mind which creates his anxieties. It is the mind which creates his conflicts. It is the mind which creates his rules. All that he is confined by, all that he is imprisoned by, is the mind, not anything else.
When I was young, I wanted freedom, but I wanted freedom in the sense of I didn't want to be trapped in the house. I wanted to be able to live where I wanted. I wanted to be able to make money. I wanted to have a girlfriend. I wanted to go to a place where I could do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. That's what I wanted. In my mind, freedom was just getting away from physical constraints and material constraints. I got all that stuff. I traveled the whole world. I ate all the food. I made all the money. I got all the things that I wanted in life. Yet the quality of my life did not change that much. The quality of my moment to moment experience didn't change that much. That's because I hadn't changed that much. My internal experience was still very much the same. Every time I got something, I wanted the next thing and wanted the next thing and wanted the next thing. All the same pains and tortures and miseries were still there. Maybe some were better. Obviously, it's better to be rich than to be poor. It's better to be healthy than to be sick. But beyond a certain point, my baseline level of peace had not changed that much. Then I started making the transition to what you're talking about, realizing that a lot of these traps were in my mind. But you've just jumped all the way. You're saying, no, it's all from the mind from the very beginning.
Yes, any freedom that leads to the desire for more freedom is not freedom. If there's a bleed, you don't clean the tributary vessels. You want to look at the source of the bleed. Even if it took someone 30 years to learn the source of the bleed, to learn the truth about what freedom really was, it would be far more effective to begin that journey at this very second, as opposed to doing it piecemeal, because that'll take 900 years. It is not abstract to say that freedom comes from the mind. What it is revelatory. The belief is that anxiety and fears and pain arise from circumstance, that they arise from other people. As long as that belief is invested inside of someone, he will spend his life trying to change circumstance. And that will be a monumental waste of life, and you only get one. So quite frankly, there isn't enough time to go piecemeal. It is far better to not understand than it is to go piecemeal, because then you're going down a tributary, and that tributary leads to other tributaries. Very soon, you're way off course.
What we're really talking about here is that all of the problems that we struggle with, we tend to externalize. We tend to solve them in the external world. And there are certain ones that are practical in the external world. Do I have food? Do I have shelter? Those kinds of things. But beyond a certain basic level, a lot of the problems we're trying to solve in the external world are actually internal problems. And even if we manage to solve the current manifestation in the external world, the new problem will just pop up tomorrow in the external world.
Everyone's looking for truth, whether they profess to look for truth or not. And the evidence for that is that everyone is looking for a way out of their problems. If they weren't, then there wouldn't be 14,000 prescriptions on every single corner from spirituality to self-help. The very fact that those things exist and the very fact that they are populated by millions means that there's an enormous appetite for relief from problems. This relates back to prescriptions. No human being actually wants to be told what to do. There's something within a human being which rejects the idea of being told what to do. Quite frankly, even when you do give prescriptions, most don't follow it. And they will beg you for years to get the prescription. And when you give it, they won't do it. People look at that and say, see, you've been given the prescription and you didn't follow it. That's your fault. No, it's not. The fault is believing that that's what they really wanted. It's not. No one wants prescriptions. Freedom really is what everyone is looking for. It is just that they've been sold many lines. They've been sold many lies, that it's about meditating and it's about practicing mindfulness and it's about doing all these things. And none of those things are wrong. It's all about the question. If your question is, I like to feel better for 20 minutes a day, it gives me a sense of peace, what can I do? There's nothing wrong with that. If the question is, I really want to have peace in my life. I don't want to have problems every single day. My entire life is spent putting out fires. I don't want that anymore. That's a different question. then those prescriptions are invalid for that.
So, what is the most important question?
I would begin with the one that's most acute for a given individual. Now, broadly speaking, everyone's problem is problems: anxiety, fear, concern, worry, conflict, confusion.
This persistent non-specific anxiety is probably the single most common human condition that most people are trying to get away from.
Yes.
And the naive version is, I have anxiety because I don't have enough money, so I need to go make more money. Then the slightly more sophisticated version is, boy, I wish I could just get over the anxiety of feeling like I don't have enough, because practically speaking, I have enough, but for some reason I'm still anxious. So I'd love to get rid of that anxiety. What's the next level after that?
It's a more fundamental level. The next level is zero. The idea that someone should get rid of anxiety is the problem. The problem is not how do I get rid of anxiety. The way is actually to learn where anxiety comes from. The people who have conquered anxiety are the ones who had a clear understanding of what it is and where it came from. The solution to a problem is never the solution. It's always the problem. The solution to any problem lies squarely deep within the problem. There are not two things, there's only one. Everyone is taught to look for solutions, and they believe that the solution is independent of the problem. But ingeniously, nature has hidden the problem inside the solution, and maybe it did it because it wanted human beings to look inside the problem. The definition of the problem is the key.
Can we go through a specific example?
Absolutely. So in the case of anxiety, a person asks, how do I get rid of anxiety? Their problem isn't that they have anxiety. The problem is that their anxiety will never end as long as they look for a solution to it. Well, if I don't find a solution, then I'm always going to have anxiety. That's correct. The solution is to go backwards, is to look what actually is this anxiety. Put a name on it. When does it arise? What part of your body does it arise in? In what situations does it arise? Know the face of anxiety, not run from it like a boogeyman.
Is this something that's be solved on an individual basis?
There's no solving. It is simply the understanding. The solution to any problem lies diving deep into the problem. The answer lies in the anxiety. Every single thing that I say is fraught with peril because the prescription givers have hijacked the English language. They've already attached an image to every single word that I use. When I say that you have to look into the anxiety, where that will go is, thanks to the spiritual jargon, what they'll say is, oh, I must face my anxiety. No, you don't. Oh, that means that I must watch my thoughts. No, you don't. Why? Because if you do that, you'll be doing so prescriptively. You'll simply become an automaton who sits there and watches his thoughts. And then you will say, I've watched my thoughts. Nothing changed. I went into the anxiety. I faced it and nothing changed. The prescription is so subtle that any attempt to follow it removes you from the solution. Even as you're listening to my words, it isn't about finding out what I'm telling you to do. It is about understanding. And through understanding, you can take your destiny in your own hands. And even when I say that, I don't mean to motivate you by telling you that you can take your destiny into your own hands. Forgive me. 1,000 apologies. I have no interest in motivating you. Because if I motivate you, then you will get raw and say, yes, I too will do that now, and you'll fail. It is about very quiet, very serious examination of what actually is being said. Never just listen to the words. People send me all these messages saying, well, what do you mean no prescriptions? You see, that's a prescription. Don't follow prescriptions. It's not about prescriptions. Go into the source of why it was being said for yourself. It is never about the words. It's where they come from.
This is what makes these conversations so difficult. Even inspiring other people is hard because if they're inspired, inspiration doesn't last. It fades. It's like reading inspirational quotes or motivational posters. You spike up and then you crash back down. There are times where I've actually inspired people to go and start a business, and I regret it because if they're not inspired naturally, they're not going to be able to sustain it for a long period of time without me around.
Well, it isn't about them. I would say that the only real problem would not be whether their inspiration is sustained. The real problem would be if there's a desire to inspire them. That's the non-starter.
I desire on my part to inspire them.
That's right. There is no other. That's another one. I can't say two words without it being a whole other thing.
Well, let's get into it. There is no other. I've said life is a single player game. You're just competing against yourself. You're mostly arguing, having conflict with, admiring, looking at yourself. You're born alone, you die alone. How you interpret things is purely through you. How you view the world is purely through you. That's what I mean by it. Perhaps you mean something deeper than that.
There is no other means that there's no problem outside of yourself, and that all conflict is self-conflict. These things in which pain arises from a circumstance aren't really caused by the circumstance. The circumstance does not cause pain, it reveals it. If someone's intention is that I wanted to inspire him, that's a problem. If the intention is that I didn't care to inspire him or not, then that's not a problem. The problem arises in the individual, because if he tried to inspire, then that came from a place of ego. Ego isn't bad. But if a person tries to inspire someone, they're really trying to attain significance in their own mind. That isn't bad either. The problem is it creates problems. That's the quote badness. If you did not care whether you inspired or not, then you'd be free. And freedom isn't good either. It's just that freedom does not create problems.
So, a simple example, if I'm on Twitter and I send out a tweet and I do it to get compliments, I get a whole bunch of compliments. I like those. I go and I click like on all the compliments. Then I get a few insults and the insults sting and I feel bad. It only takes one insult to cancel out dozens of compliments, mood-wise, just the way the human mind is built. After you've done this for a long enough time, you realize that it's because I'm liking the compliments that the insults hit me. They're hitting some deep fear that they might be true. If someone calls me a hippopotamus, I don't care. It's not real. But if someone says, oh, you're trying to play fake guru, that might hurt because sometimes I am trying to do that. And so if it reveals something about me, some conflict and some pain that already existed, then it hurts. Just by understanding how compliments puff me up, I can realize that insults bring me back down. And the freedom comes from realizing that it's not good or bad. I can continue to make that trade, but at least now I'm aware why I feel bad when I see an insult.
All of that would circle back to, do you really want to know? Are you the type of individual who really wants to know and understand where these things come from because you have a longing for getting over that for good?
One doesn't necessarily have to go through the understanding. It's helpful to have these kinds of illusions because that's how we function in society. You could argue society conditioned us that way so that we could be functional in normal society. But as you understand more of these things, one of the interesting things I've noticed is as you peel the onion, it has to be done genuinely. Otherwise, it's not real. Otherwise, it's just another pleasure chase.
Even genuine isn't a rule. There's no need to be genuine. That isn't good. Like humility, it isn't good to be humble. Nothing is good.
Yeah, if I'm engaging in self-improvement and I'm feeling good about it, then my mind will eventually be occupied with this new image of being the guy who's good at self-improvement. And I've just created another trap for myself.
It's all a shell game. That's exactly right.
One thing I've noticed is that one of the ways in which I know that I am finding truths out is that problem is solved for good.
That's exactly right.
I don't have to revisit that same problem again. Because that problem is solved for good, both my internal state and my external state, quote unquote, improve. They change. Improve is a big word. So the more they change. Internally, I'm quieter, and externally, my life is less complicated.